Hello, another podcast episode. And if you hear background noise, it's downpours that we're having. Yeah, I'm right next to the window. Yeah, as the Eurythmics say, here come the rain again, which is a good thing because we had such a dry summer and it bled into the fall season. But finally we're getting rain. And yeah, it was kind of concerning. It was like, is the rain going to come back? It did. So yeah, and it's coming in buckets. It took Halloween for it to come back, and so yeah, if you hear background noise, it's the rain. And but anyway, this episode is not about that. No, actually, what I had a completely different subject that I wanted to talk about, but it turns out that today is the 100th anniversary of the discovery of King Tut's tomb. So I want to talk about this. Um, because I have been studying uh well, ancient Egypt in general since I was 11, 12 years old. Actually, the funny thing is that when I was in 4th grade, see, because I had moved in after 3rd grade, because I went to one grade school and then we moved and I went to another grade school. So I was the odd kid, the new kid, the odd kid. Um, and as it turns out, the teacher had this book that she would let us read during reading time if we didn't have a book. And there was one time where I didn't have a book. I know, crazy. Usually I did. But and it was about Pompeii. And I mean, I was just and to be honest, there were times where I would purposely not bring my just so I could read this book. It just captivated my interest. And but a couple years after that, when I was in 6th grade, as a preteen, I became interested in ancient Egypt for some reason. I'm not sure what it was about ancient Egypt, but it was the ancient worlds. I mean, like I remember in 5th grade, we were learning about the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Incas. And so ancient worlds really interested me. For some reason, ancient Egypt, and I know that it is for a lot of other people, it's just something about it. It's mysterious. And I could use don't take a drink every time I say captivate. Please don't, you'll die. And there was one book in particular I remember reading a lot because I started going to the public library. Oh, this was also in 6th grade. This was when my grandpa Jesse passed away. And what's interesting about it is that, of course, I was grieving, but I didn't go through a depression phase like a lot of people do. And it was because I'm pretty sure it was because I was going and I was researching a lot. I was reading a lot of books. And like I said, researching, I remember having a notebook and I would be writing down all this interesting factual stuff. Well, one of the books was about mummification because, I'm weird. Yeah, Joanne Fletcher and I have that in common, I guess. As an 11-year-old, we I I'll try to find the title of the book because I can't think of it off the top of my head. And it had uh illustrations and everything. It was really interesting. And it was a kid's book and and I would look at that book all the time. When I was dropped off at the library on the weekends, I would look at this book constantly if it wasn't checked out. And well, my parents bought me a book that's called Into the Mummy's Tomb. And it's all about the discovery of King Tut's tomb. And I found it, and this thing I'll actually use, I'll take a picture of it and use it for the little thumbnail picture that I usually have in the corner. I mean, this thing is so shabby because I would read it all the time. I think from the time my parents bought it for me into high school and even after high school, it's a well done book. I mean, really, it's a good book. They did a really good job with it. And but I would sit and I would read it constantly. I would bring it to school, and because they have the whole thing. I don't know if they still do. They had a SSR, and I the teacher would have to come and tap on my desk. We're done now. Oh yes, of course. Sorry about that. And so and of course I read other books as well. I have quite a collection of books on ancient Egypt and King Tut and everything else. And I have watched tons of documentaries on the subject and all of that. So when it comes to the discovery of King Tut, I mean, first of all, let's talk about uh, the boy king. Okay, his father, Akhenaten, the eccentric pharaoh, who decided one day that he was going to get rid of all the other deities and make the Aten, the sun disk with all the hands. The rays of the sun come out, and at the end of each ray is a hand. And so that is the Aten. And he and his wife, Nefertiti, decided we are going to relocate. We're no longer here. We're going to go over, and I can't remember off the top of my head where they went. And there was a documentary, somebody in the documentary, one of the scholars and or whoever said it best when they said, well, think of it, and this one was from like years ago, like probably the early 2000s, and they said, think of it as the president of the United States says, well, we're going to relocate Washington, D.C. to Texas. And that's basically what Akhenaten did. Like, and I'm sure the Egyptians at the time were like, pardon, what is going on? I think it was Thebes that they went. I will of course correct myself and everything, but and the thing is that not a lot of people were on board with this. Yes, Pharaoh is supposed to be the physical embodiment of a god, but at the same time, when you're saying that you forget Ra, forget Anubis, forget all those, Aten now. I am God now, full God now. I don't think, yeah, and you had to, he was basically saying that they had to get rid of all the idols and all of that stuff. Only Aten. That's it. Forget everything that you know, that you knew before. A lot like what Disney did, and I will I will use this always. Disney said the expanded universe doesn't exist anymore. No, everything that you knew about the expanded universe, no, it doesn't. No, that doesn't. No, never happened. That's what Akhenaten was doing. And so, and of course the priests were just like, what is with this guy? And they had to do what he said, or else, they were going to lose their life. There's documentation of them actually hiding the idols of the um, of like Ra and Isis and Anubis and all those, and they would bury them. And so they were still staying loyal to the original gods while still like, forgive us. Which this what is happening right now? I mean, and I mean, kind of reminds me of the one pharaoh. I want to say Nero, but I think it was Caligula. I can't remember which one, where he suddenly decided that he was going to wage war with Poseidon, and he told his soldiers to start stabbing the ocean. Yeah, I can't remember which one it is. I mean, they were both out of their minds. So, but and the soldiers had to be standing there like, what? and, and of course, they had to be doing this at the same time. On the one hand, they were like, I hope nobody sees us doing this, and on the other hand, they're like, please forgive us. He's crazy. So oh man. So yeah, Akhenaten has decided that he is God and all other gods never happened. This is King Tut's dad. Okay, so when his dad died, uh, King Tut took over the throne. He was like 9 years old and everything. Now, King Tut actually tried to bring back the original religion and everything. And so, now for the longest time, until about, I want to say about 10 years ago, I'm not sure the exact, for the longest time, after King Tut was discovered, I'm going to say this here and now, it was thought that King Tut had been murdered because of, and I know I've said this before, but I'll say it in this podcast episode as well, because of the there's like spots on the back of his skull or whatever. So they thought that he had been hit on the back of the head. Now I gotta question that actually, because it turns out that there are other mummies that have those same markings on the back of the skull. And they have historians and the like have studied and found out that during mummification, somewhere along the lines, I'm not sure the right word, I guess the workers, that's what would happen. So it was during mummification that happened. So the person was already dead. And but I would think that the historians would realize that King Tut wasn't murdered because there were all these other mummies that had the same abnormality on the back of their head. So it should have been, that information should have been released. It'd be like, well, nah, it was more interesting to keep thinking that I guess. And yeah, because I remember in I think I was in 5th grade, and they had found like a sarcophagus or something, and because it was big news here, because one of the guys was from here. He had become an Egyptologist, and he was part of that excavation, and it was in the papers for like weeks. And and we were following the news and everything, and all of that. That was like back in 1992, and everything. And so, and then it suddenly cropped up again about King Tut again, and how he had been murdered and all of that. So yeah, I don't know how it made the connection, because I guess because it was in the Valley of the Kings, and yeah. So oh, good Lord, because I don't remember where the excavation was, and it's been so long ago, but I don't think it was in the Valley of the Kings. And I just remember that that was in the newspaper for um, for a long period of time, and one of the Egyptologists was from our area and everything, which was a big deal, you know. And but then all of a sudden there was like this twist that they wanted to bring up King Tut, and but I don't think that it was in the Valley of the Kings that that particular excavation was. Yeah, I'll have to look and see, and but I'll try and find it and put it in the description box. But anyway, so yeah, there was that abnormality on the back of his head. There was one other thing that uh they, you know, there was like another deformity of some kind that they concluded that he had been assaulted or something. And so, but we have confirmed that he was just deformed, and that's because um of the incest. And which, if you're unfamiliar, it's part of the religion of the time. You know, their gods, Isis and Osiris, are brother sister, and then of course husband and wife. Set and Nephthys, again, brother sister, husband and wife. So basically uh the pharaoh and his queen, it's like they're trying to keep the bloodline pure, not realizing what it was doing. And I think it's disgusting. But yeah, incest is uh not okay ever. But they thought that they were keeping the bloodline pure, you know. I mean, it was ancient times. And but they didn't really understand the consequences of it. So uh you know, unfortunately, King Tut suffered greatly. Some people seem to think that that's why Akhenaten looks the way he does. But I was watching um a documentary that talked about that he had a completely different physical deformity. It had a name and I can't remember. I will look for it and I will put it in the description box. And you know, that have like that there are people even today that have like the long features and everything else. So I will look for that and put it in the description box. So anyway, now that we have an idea of who King Tut is, he of course married his sister Noxunamun, and in the tomb they did find two fetuses I did see a documentary where they don't know where those fetuses went, which shame on you. um, I'm hoping that it's just one of those things where they're like, there's a lot of times where the the public is told, well, we don't know what happened, but at the same time, the government is keeping it safe because they're so fragile. So I'm really hoping that that's what happened. Okay, I'm giving benefit of the doubt here. Okay, because I have several books, like I said, and there's one that I had. It's a good book. It's an outdated book, a big old outdated book. It was released in like 2002. Bob Bryar, not the drummer for no, not even close. No, he's a Egyptologist and everything, archaeologist. Bob Bryar, PhD, and he wrote this book. It's called "Who the Murder of King Tut," and in the book, it's very well written because how he goes about it is he's like, this is my theory on how King Tut was murdered, and then he talks to like other different scientists and everything. It has several pictures and from when the discovery was, and it shows the fetuses. So they did exist. No, the book is fantastic. I went in thinking, great, this is just going to be one more person who's going to tell me that, you know, I have to think a certain way. And that's not what Bob Bryar did. And so even with as outdated, I love outdated books, I really do. But actually, I bought it at the time that it came out back in 2002. And it's a really good book. I recommend it even now. I mean, now that we know even that King Tut was just a very sick individual and everything, but just the way that he went through the journey of deciding this, and so he was very open-minded on it, and I appreciate that. So but anyway, I will, of course, every book that I talk about in this, I will put in the description box. And so like I said, I'm really hoping that even though they're telling us, because I saw at least 3 documentaries that talked about the fetuses, and it's like they suddenly disappeared. And I'm hoping that what it is that they were put somewhere where, because they're so fragile. I'm really hoping that's what it is. I give the benefit of the doubt on here because like with the British government, there are people who want to test these 2 young skeletons. They want to say that they are the boys in the tower, the 2 princes in the tower. And the British government says absolutely not. You cannot touch them. And so I want to say that it's something like that. And so benefit of the doubt here. And just and with the British government, I'm on board with that because let these people lay to rest, stop testing them. Oh, good heavens. There's a thing called leave it alone. Oh, good heavens. They were tested when they were first found, I think in the 30s. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that. So as for finding the tomb, now, of course, we have to talk about Howard Carter. Howard Carter, people have their different takes on him. I'm on the fence about him, Now, he is the son of of an artist. So he turned into an artist, and his dad actually recommended him to an archaeologist who was working at a oh, what one was that? I think it was a Ramses uh excavation. And give me a sec here. Because and I do have to say something. If you've never seen his drawings of the murals in Egypt, you really need to look at those because they are exquisite. They are absolutely beautiful. Um, if you only know him as the gentleman who found King Tut's tomb, uh, honestly, go look at his work before he because like I said, his illustrations of the just his Egyptian illustrations are just phenomenal, absolutely beautiful. Um, so anyway, I'm looking up something here. So he did work in Amarna. Amarna was where Akhenaten, that was the capital that that Akhenaten found. Um, that was, it wasn't Thebes. And then he worked at Deir el Bahari, and and that's where he recorded wall reliefs of in the temple of Hatshepsut, which again are absolutely stunning. I think they're watercolor, and they're just absolutely gorgeous. And then he oversaw a number of excavations at the restoration of Thebes while in the Valley of the Kings. And he started working with an American archaeologist named Theodore Davis. That was in 1899. Then in 1904, he ended up, there was like a hiccup of some kind because there was a dispute with the locals over tomb thefts, and he ended up transferred. Um, and I don't believe a lot of things that, if, because there are people that they just despise the man, and so they say, oh yeah, he was stealing, and it's like this is the thing, is that, if he had antiquities in his home at the time, uh you know there weren't really any rules or regulations as to having antiquities. There really weren't. I mean, it wasn't until it wasn't until like after the Titanic was found that people started realizing that this was a problem. Having antiquities as like uh, a thing on your mantle was an issue, you know, because people were going down to raid a burial site. And yeah, so um oh yeah, these are priceless artifacts. Okay. Yeah, I mean back then yeah. I don't think I have to really explain that. And so anyway, I mean I'm not saying that Howard Carter is like this golden boy or anything. Yeah, he's not this. Yeah, nothing like that. I mean, he has talent and everything. Sure, he found the greatest uh the greatest tomb ever and everything, and you can hate him to high heaven. I'm not going to tell you you can't and everything, but if he actually caught tomb robbers, then just say so. No need to cover it up. And but he did have uh some disputes, you know, like a you know, there was like a thing called the Saqqara affair and all that. And he did resolve that, and then he moved to Luxor. He went for a time where he didn't have any kind of employment with the archaeology, with any kind of archaeological dig sites, and he would paint watercolors of around all over, and he would sell to tourists. And then he went back to Theodore Davis, and then he began to work for Lord Carnarvon by 1907. So Carnarvon employed him to supervise the excavation of at tombs in Deir el-Bahari, and that was near Thebes. And of course, the way that that works is you he would pay for a season. So Howard Carter would oversee this dig every season. And if you didn't find anything, you know, Lord Carnarvon was basically like, well, did you find anything? Well, no. So why should I pay for another season? You know, this, and but Howard Carter was so determined. He knew something was out there. And now when it and in that book that I was talking about, the Into the Mummy's Tomb, Lord Carnarvon had quite a few treasures from the Valley of the Kings and all that. But this is the thing, is Howard Carter from another dig site saw the name Tutankhamen, and that sparked his he wanted to find this tomb. He knew that there was this king, never been heard of before, and then all of a sudden he was like, I want to find this tomb. It has to be somewhere around here. Why would this vase or whatever it was have this name, just this random name? So, and so they kept digging and digging. They weren't finding anything, and they worked. By 1914, still nothing. Okay. And at some point, Lord Carnarvon, it was 1922. Okay. So we're in 1922, 1914. Like I was saying, Lord Carnarvon was starting to get frustrated because it was like everywhere they went in this Valley of the Kings, there was nothing. Now, there were other people who were getting successful. There were excavations happening and they were finding treasures and everything. And, but I mean, he was starting to lose hope. He just wanted to close up shop, but Howard Carter was like, no, there's something out there. So by 1922, Carnarvon was like, you know, we find little trinkets here and there, and that's great and everything, these little pieces of artifacts, but that's not enough. That's not enough for me to keep giving you money to do these excavations. I need to see an actual tomb of like a mummy or something. What? Why should I do this again? And and Howard was able to convince him, one more season. I promise you, one more season, we'll find something. I just know it's out there. And so they continued in the Valley of the Kings, and it paid off. It paid off. Can you imagine if Carnarvon had, and I hope I'm saying that right. I'm very sorry if I'm saying it incorrectly. And I really do. I really do apologize if I'm saying his name incorrectly. But can you imagine if he had said, forget it. Forget it, Carter. I'm done. Think about it. If he had walked away and and what if King Tut's tomb had not been found? Would it still be would it still be buried? I'm there's just so many what ifs on that one. I mean, there's because of course in the 20s, I mean, you going back in the Edwardian era, there were excavations being found and everything. I mean, there were tombs and everything found. There was one. There was a husband and wife tomb found. I will put that in the description box. Joanne Flexner does a wonderful job of talking about this couple and everything. It's fantastic. And yes, I'm a big fan of Joanne Flexner. And it seems like that tomb was found in the Edwardian era, and it could be the early like in 1900 something, but the point is that these tombs, these intact tombs were found. There was also a lot of people were traveling a lot in the late Victorian and Edwardian era, and in the 20s and everything. They were, and mostly they were traveling to Egypt because Egypt was exotic. And so even before King Tut's tomb was found, because like I said, there was a Ramses tomb that was found, and of course Hatshepsut and everything, because of Howard Carter's watercolor and everything. So people were coming. People were coming to see all of this exotic, all the murals and all of that. There's a lot of the autochrome photographs from the Edwardian days, people dressing up. And you also think of like Cleopatra, Theodora's Cleopatra, and even the 1912 Cleopatra. So people were interested in this. Like I said, it was interesting. It was captivating. Again, do not take a drink every time I say it because you will die. But it's just, it just is interesting to me. It makes me wonder if it had not been found, if Lord Carnarvon had said, again, I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, I wonder about that, you know. I'm sorry. I feel really bad when I say things wrong. But if he had walked away, tomb wasn't found, there would not be an Egyptian revival. As I mean, my great grandmother talked about how that Egyptian, she says, I wore all that stuff. I had all the dresses, I had the purses, I had the earrings, I had all of it. The music was affected by Egypt. Everything was affected by Egyptian revival. You look at some of the ads, I mean, people were using Egyptian for selling soap, for selling cigars, for selling cigarettes, for selling everything, everything under the sun. I mean, you name it, they were using it after King Tut's tomb was found. So, I mean, if he hadn't been found, if the tomb had not been found, would it still be under, would it still be there? We'll never know. I mean, would it be found in possibly the 60s? Would it be found in the 80s? Who knows? Would it be found in the 90s? and and when it would be found, how would people react? I mean, I think for me, I think the 1920s was the best time for it to be found. I think because of what was happening at the time, people were traveling a lot and everything, and the Egyptian revival just seemed to fit the 1920s, the early 1920s and everything. I think if King Tut's tomb had been found in the 50s or 60s, I don't know. I don't think it would have had the same, and I could be wrong. I but anyway, so they're still excavating. November 4th, 1922. And the interesting thing about how his tomb is found, a young man, he stumbles on a stone. And now there's different stories that I hear about this. I guess that it was like an assistant to Howard Carter. He was rushing to send a message to Howard Carter. That was one of the first stories that I ever read, was that he was rushing to Howard Carter and he stumbled and everything, and then he was grabbing for the message and found this. And when he pulled back the message, you know, because he had to brush away all the sand, and when he pulled back the message, I mean, when it looked like a step. So then he ran to Howard Carter and he was telling Howard Carter, I found a step, I found a step. And so he brought it back. Now there have been other stories where the young man was like their water boy, and they were going to, when he fell, and uh, of course the water went everywhere and everything, and they were gonna get upset with him and everything. He took them back to show where he had fell, and that's when they found the step and everything. I mean, there's just been, but it's always that it was a young man and he tripped. So but the fact is that they found the steps etched in the rock. And so they started to dig out the rock. You know, they started to pull the sand away and find these stairs. He contacts uh Lord Carnarvon and everything. Well, first what happened was he saw the plaster wall with the uh cartouche, and you know, like with the rope around it and the cartouche and everything, and the hieroglyphs and all that. Now he then contacted Carnarvon, and Carnarvon immediately came to Egypt along with his daughter, who is Lady Evelyn Herbert. And so they waited. Now, one thing that, this is another thing that has been said is, because I've seen this in several books that I've read, and I've also seen it in a few of the older History Channel documentaries, like when I was in high school. Oh, yeah, way back when. Is that before Howard Carter and the others entered King Tut's tomb, they had the suspicion that tomb robbers had come in. Now, I don't know if it's been proven that that never happened, you know, because again, I have outdated books and a lot of those documentaries are outdated. So I would love to hear from you. And I mean, if you've seen something or read something that contradicts that, I have no problem hearing from you to tell me. But because it was, everything was just thrown in there. And so they had the idea that it was that tomb robbers had come in. But the thing was that nothing was nothing was um nothing was changed. I mean, like maybe priests came in. I don't know. I can understand priests and everything, but the way that they found it and everything, I don't know. I just have a hard time with that. I would um because usually how they did it was uh they would sweep out the footsteps and everything, because everything had to be pristine, and it couldn't look like anybody had been in there. And so and yeah, there were footprints everywhere. And I don't know, because yeah, they would, the way that the ancient Egyptians would do it is like they would sweep away the footsteps and everything, and yet that was not done. I mean, it seemed like, so maybe it was just a massive rush job just to get him get him in there and go. let's get to the wine and the party. The more I hear about it, I just feel bad for King King Tut, because he his dad was his parents were so eccentric, and telling people that they had to follow their religion, and forget the ancient religions, and then he tried to fix that, and then to die so young and then be forgotten for his, and but we'll get to that in a second. So once Lord Carnarvon came with his daughter, by November 24th, so 20 days later, they cleared it out again. It had King Tut's cartouche on there, which a cartouche, if you're unfamiliar, is the oval shape, and it has the hieroglyphs inside, and that's the name, or it has your titles in it. And yeah, there was I think it's Khufu, and his mom had a one of those chairs where she would sit in, and of course the people would carry her around, and on the back it has all of her titles when she was alive, and all in cartouche. She was the Lady of Egypt. So of course then they remove the plaster. Now the way that they did this, okay, so this is this is where I think, even me, I think that Howard and his friends were like super dickheads in this sense. It was like they just couldn't wait to see everything, because they were supposed to wait on a certain day where everybody was going to be there, um, and see the actual opening of the tomb. They were going to have people filming it and photographing it, and everything else, but they couldn't wait. So it was Howard and of course Lord Carnarvon and his daughter, and there was one other person there, and I can't remember who he was. So it was, everybody else was in bed, right? So they sneak into this area, they go down the stairs, and they flake off a corner of the plaster, and with a candle they look in, and I believe it was the assistant or whoever it was that looked in, and they ask him, "What do you see?" And he said, "Wonderful things." And yeah, you know, so then of course they try to do a patch up job in the corner and everything, and it's like, dude, okay, I don't know, I guess people were so excited that they weren't going to actually notice the more recent patch job, but and everything. But yeah, people didn't have such Sherlock Holmes senses as as now. Where did all the hieroglyphs? Because the hieroglyphs on that wall go all the way down. It's like, that matrix wall that we're so used to. I mean, like the gridding goes all the way down. That's how it is on that wall, except for that one. Because these four idiots could not wait. Oh my gosh. So yeah, they had chiseled that corner, looked inside, and it's wonderful things. And yeah, it was an assistant named Arthur Calendar. And I knew it was four people. I just couldn't remember who that one guy was. But so the next day, then they had to act surprised over everything. They how are you gonna even back then, the Egyptian government was all about tightness and everything. So they made an unauthorized visit to the tomb and they got in trouble. So um yeah. So, you know, there have been stories where they went further inside. I have read books where it was like they went inside um and looked around and rummaged around and everything and then jumped out and all that. There's no way that they could, because the next day they were supposed to do the actual inspection in front of the Egyptian officials and everything. How are you supposed to do that? They just flaked off the corner. They can't squeeze through that corner. They had to do enough. Yeah. The fact that they even did that is just ridiculous to me. But anyway, so they were able to enter the tomb. I mean, they entered the tomb and everything with the Egyptian officials there, and the place looks like a mess. However, the thing to understand is this thing is stockpiled with all kinds of antiquity. And I mean, that first room had all kinds of just, I mean, you had like baskets and you had the couches and when they opened the tomb, they were overwhelmed with this smell that was I believe they said that it was like a lavender type smell. It was the flowers that they left in there when he died. And everything. So it was November 27th. This is when they go in there with the officials and everything to make sure that it was and all that for and the officials were basically making sure that it was okay to, they wanted to see it first and all that. Yeah, they did get reprimanded for because the officials did see that little patch. It's like, shame on you, and for good reason. I mean, you couldn't wait. Oh man, yeah. I remember first reading that and everything, and I know, as a middle schooler, I would think, well, yeah, I wouldn't be able to wait either. It's kind of like at Christmas. But when you're an adult, it's like, come on, man, for real. I get it. You're really excited. You found this tomb and everything. but you need to go by the book. Okay. The last thing you want to do is be is to make the Egyptian government mad. And they almost did that. So 2 days later, on November 29th, the tomb was officially opened, and of course there's all these photographs. The photographs are now being are being colorized, which the person who's colorizing these pictures does an absolutely wonderful job. And I and yeah, I really like the job that he's doing with these. But I'm also going to put a video in the description box. There's a video that's been done for the photographer that worked with Howard Carter, and so we shouldn't forget about him. I always forget his name. And but yeah, he worked in the harsh weather, you know, the harsh sand and grit, and these pictures came out so flawless. So and this is film photography. Don't forget, this is not digital photography. This is film photography. So yeah, I'll put that in the description boxes. And so I mean, the pieces that they found are just yeah, Harry Burton, that was the name of the photographer. And his photographs are just absolutely stunning in black and white, and the person who is colorizing these pictures deserves credit, because I think that they're brilliant. And so yeah. I'm sorry I don't know his name, or whoever is doing it. And so but yeah, all the credit. And but there's I think one of the most stunning pieces is that jackal. I mean, that jackal is just gorgeous. You know, ever since I first started researching King Tut and the discovery of King Tut and seeing the treasures in his tomb, that jackal is so beautiful. I love that jackal. And the jackal with the it had like a blanket or something over it, and I can't even imagine going into that chamber and seeing that jackal staring you down. Just I mean, I would have loved to be there when Howard goes into that chamber with, you know, he had to have a lantern, and he goes in, and all of a sudden he steps back and oh, because it looks so real. It really does. I mean, just and it's used for so many books on Egypt, like the one that I was talking about, The Murder of King Tut. It's on the cover of the book, and or the edition that I have. And because it's just it's gorgeous. Now they have all these gold pieces, alabaster pieces, and there were chariots, and just and they hadn't even found his coffin yet. Now, when I in that one book that I talk about, the Into the Mummy's Tomb, uh that's probably not even the title of it. I'll of course correct myself. And Now that I think about it, that's probably not the title. But they had there's these two guards in the one chamber that's supposed to be where his uh um coffin is. And again, these guys couldn't wait, and so they were so they decided to go in before everybody else, and they were going around and everything. They had and see, by this point, because the photographer was there, Harry Burton was in there, and he was photographing for documentation and this, that, and the other. And of course, they had, you see, like the tags with the numbers on them and everything, and all of that. And that's part of the documenting and all that. Because when you take the pieces out, then you know what's what and all that, as far as I know. And I'm not the Egyptologist, okay, but that's what I would think anyway. But anyway, um, so there's a picture of these two guards, and they are standing, on either side, and you see like this basket with a bunch of like reeds and stuff. I mean, it is so obvious that it's hiding something. And that's because they had dug a hole so that they could go into that one chamber. They wanted to look around. They just couldn't wait. Howard Carter and the gang just couldn't wait. And it's just like, how many more times are you going to get in trouble? I mean, oh my gosh. So I just remember looking at that and looking at that picture, and I'm like, that is so obvious. Did they really think that they could get away with that? You know, the Alcatraz, where the guys were able to escape and everything, they uh dug the hole and were able to escape. They didn't make it so obvious. This was obvious. And that was like, what, 20 years later? Yeah. No, that was 40 years later. My math was not very good math. Oh, good heavens. Oh my gosh. Yeah, one thing about those guards, again, with that book, that I'm starting to doubt myself on the title. I'm telling you, I read that book so much. It's such a good book. And again, I'll put it in the description box. Well worth the read, whether it's outdated or not. It's really good. And oh man. But one thing about it is that at the end of the book, what they talked about with those guards is the way that their kilt is. They had this theory that there's something inside those kilts. Well, of course, at this point, they have debunked that. There's nothing in the kilts, but they were trying to say in the book that there is like a scroll or something. Oh, how I wish there was. That would have been, if only, Of course, at this time, because I got the book in 93, 94, somewhere in there. And at that time, we didn't know that that tomb, uh, because of it being so small and everything. I mean, you think about it. It's this is a pharaoh, so you would think that the tomb would not be such an afterthought. Well, of course, we didn't really think of anything like that, and I don't think anybody did. Well, now with a lot of the documentaries that I've been watching, you start to think about it, and it's like, yeah, um, how much did his vizier, that's his name, how badly did he want to be pharaoh. I mean, now, to be honest, we can't really take murder off the table now that I've said all that other stuff. He could have been poisoned. I mean, there's so many other, yes, he was a deformed young man and all of that. There's just so many, the fact that because Eyes tomb was extravagant. I mean, and really King Tut's tomb doesn't really fit him. You look at it and it's kind of like, what does this have to do with him? When I was watching one of the documentaries, and I was like, and they mentioned how it's such an afterthought, and it could be Vizier Eyes. I was looking at the murals and everything on the wall and everything, and I was like, given all the stuff that we know about King Tut, this has nothing to do with King Tut. Now, Vizier Eye did take over. He married the widow, Noxunamun, and what's interesting is that not long after, Noxunamun disappears from history. I mean, it's like she just, where did she go? Now I'm not saying that he got rid of her. I no, because there are a lot of people that, they just, that happens. Before you get the wrong idea. It could be they had a disagreement and that sort of thing. He just decided, well, you're not going to be immortalized. And because that tended to happen. And anyway, but yeah, and then you look at, I don't know, I just think that he was corrupt. I don't think he was a nice guy. And yeah, so I feel bad for King Tut. The other thing was, I was watching one with Joanne, another with Joanne Fletcher, and something that she pointed out was, well, a couple things that she pointed out actually was the throne of King Tut, which is a gorgeous throne. I love the scene on the back of it, but something that she pointed out that I never really thought of was behind the king and queen is the Aten. Why is the Aten there? King Tut was trying to get rid of anything having to do with his dad, and the Aten is there. Okay. There's also wrinkles and everything surrounding Noxunamun. And there's also wrinkles around his throne. I mean, not his throne, his crown. That also got me to wondering, he's wearing this beautiful throne. How come that wasn't in the tomb? I haven't seen that anywhere. You would think that throne, I mean, that, I keep saying throne, that particular crown that you see on the tomb, so many words. Okay, let's see if I can say this. The crown that King Tut is wearing in the image on the throne, how come we don't see that in the tomb? Yay, I said it. I just, because that's that's pretty extravagant. And you would think something like that would be in the tomb. Like I understand all the guardians and everything like that, like the jackal and the two guards and those kinds of things. But you would think that he would have personal stuff too. I don't remember even seeing like the Shepti figures. In the afterlife, you're supposed to have Shepti figures. He did I don't remember seeing anything like that. In all the pictures that I've ever seen of King Tut's tomb, I don't remember seeing anything like that. Now, I could be wrong, and I'm waiting for the day I'm right. But it just so this was an image of Akhenaten and his wife, not King Tut and and Moon. All these years that I've been looking at this, and basically the priests were trying to get rid of everything having to do with Akhenaten, and King Tut was the opportunity. I mean, I feel bad for this kid. I mean, he's oh, good heavens. He's thrown into a tomb that even isn't even his. And half the stuff in that tomb isn't even his. There's dad's. Oh, good Lord. Um, because also the famous mask, I mean, that famous, beautiful gold mask, come to find out that it's not his. Because one thing that was pointed out was that it shows pierced ears. Now, a man of his age that is a pharaoh would not have pierced ears. Now, he had earrings, yes. They those earrings are insane. I would think that he would tear his ears wearing those. Now, look, I worked at a body shop, you know, like I pierced a few ears and yeah, one of those places, a tattoo body shop and everything. And but my goodness. I mean, the fact that you had to screw it in. They're beautiful. They're they're beautiful earrings. I remember the first time I saw them and I'm like, those are earrings? How do you put them in? they're I they're beautiful pieces and everything, but it's a modern way of thinking. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, but the thing that was mentioned was that a man of his age as pharaoh would not wear pierced would not have pierced ears. It was a woman. And so and then you can also see along the neckline that it was fused together. So that was someone else. They think that it was his mom. This this poor guy. Uh just he can't win. Oh man, he really can't win. So oh, good heavens. But anyway, what now, aside from all that, um, I know Howard found this extravagant tomb, had wonderful treasures. You know, it kickstarted finding out more about the ancient world and everything else. I mean, a lot about the ancient world and everything. But thanks to the digital age, we are able to find out a lot more, you know, and able to scan all this stuff and find out a lot more. Um, but there was a downside. This is also the age of superstition. We're still heavy into the superstition and all of that, and this spiritualism and this, that, and the other. So when Lord Carnarvon, again, I apologize for saying his name wrong if I am, when he died of, it was in 1923, by this point, he and Carter were starting to, their relationship was starting to crumble. And the whole thing about that was they were disagreeing on how to deal with the Egyptian authorities. And that actually halted the excavation altogether. Um, you know, after finding the tomb, Carter's ego inflated so much. And unfortunately, he wasn't listening to any, he just was in a bubble and he just was not listening to anything. And unfortunately, that's where the rift happened with his employer. It was like all of a sudden he forgot that he was employed by this man. And so, yeah, that brought a halt to the excavation. And uh, not long after that, a lot of weird things started to happen after uh, the tomb was found, such as uh, a pet canary died, and that was seen as a bad omen or a bad sign. And also at the same time, when there was like a I don't, it was Lord Carnarvon's dog howled and then fell over and died. At the same time in Egypt, the lights all went out. It was like this um, power outage of some kind. And so, yeah, everybody took it as a bad sign. You know, oh my gosh, the mummy is coming back. Yeah, the ghost of King Tut is coming to hurt us all and all this. And then when Lord Carnarvon died of blood poisoning, it was like the mummy's curse. That's where the mummy's curse really took off. Well, what happened was that he had like a bug bite, and he had been shaving, nicked the bug bite, and ended up with blood poisoning because of it. Yeah, he was in Egypt when it happened, and so he got sick and he passed away. And terrible thing, it was awful. And but because we're in, you know, superstition, the age of superstition, I shouldn't talk fast, but I do. That time it was talking fast. It wasn't dyslexia. But people took it as it's, the mummy's curse, King Tut's coming. He's gonna get us all. So his widow went ahead and let Howard Carter continue working and everything, despite all of the, so-called controversy, air quotes, controversy. The papers were just running with this whole thing of mummy's curse, uh, the mummy of King Tut killed Lord Carnarvon. And and actually the papers were, because everybody was so scared out of their minds, it almost stopped the excavation altogether. But no, they continued. And so and yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not superstitious in any way, shape, or form, but to have all of those odd things happen at once, I mean, like the canary, the pet canary dying and everything, and then the dog falling over, howling and then falling over dead, that is a little weird. And at the same time, the lights go out in Egypt. I would be a little spooked by that too, if living back then and that happening. But I wouldn't go so far as to, I don't know. Now, Carter did write several books on the subject. I haven't had the chance to read any of them because I can't find them. They are on Amazon. They're all over on Amazon. And he did co-write a book with Lord Carnarvon back in 1912. It was called 5 Years Exploration at Thebes. Before he, that was like a decade before he found King Tut's tomb. So, and I believe there is a book that has all of his paintings in them, and that has all of his paintings. And now there's a 3-volume account on the discovery of King Tut's tomb. I really want that. And everything, but it's always so expensive. And even with the paperback. And so I just keep waiting for it to come down in price. And because I want to buy it all together instead of buying one and then the other, and then, yeah. But of course he did lectures and that sort of thing on the subject, much like Bob Ballard with Titanic. And I mean, once you do something important like this, when you do such an important discovery like this, it becomes your thing. This is what you do for the rest of your life. and I mean, and so you can't fault the guy. Like I said, he's not perfect. And even there are things that he did that I think are questionable and he shouldn't have done. But I mean, he found King Tut's tomb. We probably, if he hadn't have found King Tut's tomb, possibly we possibly would still be in the dark as to who this particular pharaoh is. You think about that. And until somebody found him. So, you got to give him credit with that. And so, and I mean, the same goes with Bob Ballard. I mean, there were so many theories concerning Titanic, and he debunked them when he found it, like, did this happen? Did that happen? Was this going? And he confirmed it. And did they lock this in the third class? Well, he debunked that, and he was able to say, yeah, the doors were locked down there. And so, you know, when you do something, when you're able to find something and everything, and it becomes your trademark. I guess that's the word for it. It becomes your trademark. And so, you write books on it, you do lectures on it for the rest of your life, and why not? And you can't fault the guy. But I just know that I have tons of books. Well, not ton, that's an exaggeration, but I have several books on this subject. I mean, on ancient Egypt in general, and I have studied this particular subject for decades because, like I said, it interests me. I love learning about it. I love that we're learning more things about it practically every day. And such as, we found out that King Tut was just a sick young man. Was he murdered? Maybe. I mean, it's possible that he was poisoned. There's one of the Ramses. I don't remember which one, but they were on theory that they were going on this theory that he could have been poisoned. They were trying to figure out how he was poisoned. It's possible. Okay. But as for the abnormalities on the back of his head, they've confirmed that no, he wasn't hit on the back of the head by anybody. And they've confirmed that and everything. So they were also running with the theory that he fell out of a chariot, and it just wasn't possible. And everything. Look, when it comes to the ancient Egyptians, they were experts when it came to chariot riding. And so I can't see, the only way that I could see that would happen is if he were struck by an arrow of some, if he were wounded. That's and but anyway, I think this is the most famous discovery in the 20th century. I can't think of, well, no, I mean, because there was King Tut's tomb, and then the discovery of Titanic's. We can't forget that. And so it's kind of a balance of the scale. And yeah, it balances the scale. But King Tut's tomb was huge. I mean, you got an Egyptian revival. My great grandmother talked about how it just it took over everything. And I do have to say that, I mean, if King Tut's tomb had been found in any other decade, I don't think it would have the same effect. I mean, if it had been found in like the 50s, what do you think? If it had been found in the 70s, what do you think? Which, by the way, I'm going to put it in the description box. I don't know what anyone is thinking that they say that Steve Martin's King Tut song is racist. I heard that and I'm just like, what? Why? How? Oh my gosh. Did you say that without actually hearing the song? Are you just whatever. But the song is hilarious. Look, that was back when Saturday Night Live would put together sketches that had to do with what was going on during the time. And at the time, there was the King Tut exhibit where artifacts were touring the world. And so he even says it in his monologue before he sings the song. So I don't know. I don't know where you're going with it. It's racist. He even I mean he even makes fun of people because he says he gave his life, you know, about in the song Steve Martin even says he gave his life for tourism. I mean the whole song is making fun of the fact that people are using King Tut for tourism. So yeah, I don't know why you got where you got racism out of that. Oh, the song is hilarious, and it was about 5 years ago that the artifacts made the rounds again. My former dance teacher went and saw all that stuff, and so I don't know. Is it? I don't get where people come from anymore. But I would love to hear from you. I mean, anything that I've said in this that is incorrect, please by all means correct me. I have no problem hearing from you, and I know that there are things that I say that are wrong. Anyway, I'll close up here.